We've got a question for you. Are you ready to end this year on a high note financially? Whether it's reviewing your budget, fine tuning your retirement plan, or getting tax ready. Today, we're covering essential year end steps to keep you on track.
Exactly, Chris. We're diving into all the must-do items before this year wraps up. If you're ready to make some financial moves that set you up strong for the start of next year, stick around. We're giving you practical tips and advice on how to have a strong 2025.
And you won't want to miss the end of this episode. We're going to be sharing some bonus tips to maximize your year-end gains and have a solid start for the new year.
This is the Fi Guys. Let's jump in.
Dominic, can you believe that we are closing out 2024? We're already in December, dude.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas to everybody. If you're just now starting the Christmas music, you're not my kind of people. I started it 4 months ago. I know, probably going to catch some hate in the comments for that. Nothing wrong with that. I can take it. But I'm so excited to talk about our year-end financial checklist. I want to start 2025 off so strong. Because I don't know about you, but this year flew by. Oh my goodness. What a year, though. What a year.
Yeah, it's been wild. And, today we're going to be talking about, just like you said, is a year-end financial checklist to make sure that we set ourselves up for a good 2025 and make sure that we close out 2024 as financially strong as we possibly can. So if you don't mind, I'd like to get into pretty much the definitive year-end checklist and stick around to the end because we do have a bonus for you that didn't make the cut of what things you should do, but you probably should just add it on there anyways. So what I want to talk about first in segment one is financial review and financial planning. And I know that everyone hates this word. I hate this word too, but the first thing we need to do is we need to review our budget. And remember how here at the Fi Guys, we differentiate between budget and spending plan. Budget, it's backwards looking. That's the reason when someone says, oh, you need to have a budget for the future, that never really works because the budget is always something that happened in the past. The spending plan is something that we have for the future. But for this one, we do need to review the budget. We need to look at what areas happened. What did happen in order to assess our current financial situation and identify areas where we either exceeded what we expected for with our spending plan or we fell short of our goals.
That's a great place to start. And yeah, I would agree. I do not like the word budget. I'm much better. I love the spending plan. It's looking forward to the future. I'm optimistic. I'm not a big fan of looking back. You can take the reverse out of my car because I'm not going back. Okay. So I love that. So yeah, let's review the budget. That's step one. I like it. Or review the spending plan.
Yeah, you could review your spending plan to see if you stuck to what you said you were going to do. I think that this is like, right now we're in the holiday season. It's Christmas time, Hanukkah time, whatever you celebrate, we're all about it. But this is the scariest part, right? This is the Halloween moment of having to actually look at the ghouls, the demons, the ghosts in your past. But this is the thing that we all need to do. I know it's scary to maybe open up that bank account, look at that credit statement, figure out what the hell is going on, because the longer that I avoid it, the longer that I don't look at it, I can at least say like everything's okay. But the moment I look at it, now it becomes real. But if we never look at it, this monster is just going to grow in the corner, bigger and bigger and bigger. So that is the reason that this is the most important thing. And the first thing we have to do is review how much money we're spending. And hopefully from last year, you guys have been listening to the pod for at least a year, you had a plan for this year. And now we get to see, did we stick to it? Do we not stick to it? If we didn't have a plan, let's freaking create a plan so that 2025 is better off. And we're going to get to that point a little bit later.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm excited. Let's continue. This has been beneficial so far. So yeah, oh man, I really, you had to bring up budget, man. It's sticking in my head now. I got to get it out. Let's get on. Let's keep it moving.
Okay. I'll move us away from budget. So we all know the equation, right? It's how much money you make minus how much money you spend equals your driver to financial independence, the gap, quote unquote. So the next thing we want to do, we just looked at the budget. That's how much money we're spending. Let's go ahead and now look back at X on that equation. How much money did you come in? How much money has come into your life this year? So what I want you to do is review your income. How much did you bring in 2024 up to this point? Is it above or below what you expected? Because that's going to be a huge driver towards your financial independence. If you expected to make $60,000, $80,000, $100,000 this year, and you're $20,000 short, there's something going wrong. Now, again, it's the beginning of December, so we have a few more weeks. Maybe you have a bonus planned. Maybe there's something in your budget, but you need to make sure that am I on track? Or ideally, maybe am I ahead of what I expected to be? If that's the case, wonderful. Maybe we can have a little bit bigger of a Christmas celebration than we expected to. Or maybe we can put that money towards something like retirement or having fun, whatever it is for you. I'm totally cool with it.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Honestly, yeah. And it's nice that you said that. Well, yeah, we still have a month left. Maybe you got a bonus coming. That would be nice. But it's so nice to like, okay, January 1 starts. It's like, what should we do now? It's like, no, no, no. In early December, we created the plan on what this year's going to be about, how we're going to spend our money. I love that. I love not having to come up with a plan because I already came up with a plan. I love that. I absolutely love that. Doing the hard things when I actually feel like doing the hard things rather than getting there and being like, damn, still have to do the hard thing. Does that, I hope that makes sense to the people. But yeah, let's create it now so we don't have to suffer later.
Yeah, you make that hard choice today, you're going to set yourself up for an easier life tomorrow. Don't make the easy choice today. The easy choice is just saying, it's okay, future me will deal with it. But that means future you is going to look back on you right now being like, man, dude, again, like again, you put me in this situation. So set your future self up because the really funny part about it is that's the same person. It's you. You're the one who has to deal with it at some point. Now, I know earlier I said that reviewing your budget, quote unquote, your spending plan is scary. This is probably the next scariest part because most people have zero understanding about it. And this is doing some year-end tax planning. And what that really means is before December 31st comes up, we need to adjust our tax withholdings to ideally try to get as close to how much money is going to the IRS before we have to owe taxes in April or March or whenever you file your taxes in the future. So there's a really easy way of doing this. You're going to go ahead and look at your spending, look at your income because you just looked at that. Go on to ChatGPT or you can go to smartasset.com or you can just Google it. I made blank amount of money this year, and you're going to do your gross. So how much you made before all your taxes deductions. Is how much I made this year, roughly, and I live in this state. How much money should I be paying in taxes? And now look on your W 2 forms and see, have I paid around that much? If I've paid substantially more, okay, then I know that I'm probably going to get a refund. Maybe for this last month, I can tear down how much my company is taking out for taxes. Or the other side of the coin could be you look at that and you say, I'm supposed to be probably paying $20,000 or $30,000 in taxes. And at this point, I've only paid $10,000. So I'm going to have a big O when it comes in 2025 when I file my taxes. Let's go ahead and try to get ahead of this a little bit and let's adjust it so that my company withholds a little bit more money for me. Because that's the reason they withhold that money. It's to protect you, their employee, from owing a bunch of money to the IRS. Because most companies understand that if you made $10,000 this month and we gave you $10,000, you're going to spend $10,000. But in actuality, you made $10,000 and you only get to keep $7,000, $8,000 of that because the rest of it's going to go to taxes. So they withhold that from you to protect you from yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great place to start. I mean, taxes are so often forgotten and not appreciated. And it's so important to plan for because you don't want to get stuck with a massive tax bill come, what is it, April 15th? Um, so yeah, that's a great place to, that's another great one. Another great one. Um, yeah, do you have any tips for us to kind of get through the scariness of the taxes or anything we should be looking for in particular?
Taxes are not my forte. I still hire a CPA. I know quite a bit about it just because of my job. But
Mhm.
what I would start with is we did do an entire tax, like everything, on one of the podcasts during the FI crash course. So I'd go back and find that. Honestly, at this point in the pod, I don't remember which one that is. If I can find it, I'll put it in the show notes. Um, but I would just start to get familiar with it. So when it comes down to it, what it really is how much money you make, your gross, a portion of that's going to go to FICA, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and then the rest of it's going to go towards, which is the FICA, and then maybe your state if your state has income taxes. So again, Google is or ChatGPT is going to be a great resource for you to start to see like how much money should I owe. An additional thing to do during the tax planning during this year is to start looking for maybe some tax deductions or credits that we can get in December. Because once it gets to January 1st, you can't retroactive that into 2024. But again, I would talk to a CPA on that. Do you have any points when that comes to that, Dominic?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually found the podcast that we did. It was one of our earliest podcasts. It was released on November 20th, 2023. So a bit of a while ago. Still a lot of great information in it. That was podcast number 15, using the tax code to reduce your taxes. So, just a heads up, using the tax code to reduce your taxes, podcast number 15 from the Fi Guys.
Wonderful. Yeah, I remember doing that. Maybe we should revisit that. I know that whenever we put out a tax podcast, most people are like, skip. But it is really important information because there's only two things guaranteed in this life. That's death and taxes. So we might as well start to look at that rather than just try to avoid it because eventually it's going to come for us anyways.
Exactly. All righty. Well, let's keep the ball moving. Let's do it. Let's keep going.
Yep. And if you are someone that doesn't know much about taxes, I know most people what they do is they wait to find a CPA to find a tax person until, I mean, God, April 15th, like the day that it's due. They're like, I really need a CPA. They're walking into H&R Block, they're calling up their local CPAs they found on Google and they're like, help me, help me. Right now would be the time to reach out to those CPAs. Right now would be the time to start if you do need that kind of help. If you're not the kind of person that can go over to Costco, buy the what is it, H&R Block little free thingy or the TurboTax
TurboTax.
thing. If that's
Yeah.
not you, if
Yeah.
that's not you, you have a more complex situation. Now would be the time to start reaching out and setting up those relationships if you don't already have it in place.
I
Now,
agree.
after we've done these few things, right? We've reviewed our budget, we've reviewed our income, we've looked at some tax planning before the December 31st deadline of getting any deductions and credits that we possibly can. The next thing that we need to do is we need to evaluate our financial goals. We need to assess the progress we made. And we need to set upcoming goals for this upcoming year. Just like we talked about earlier, hard choice today, easy decision tomorrow. So let's go ahead and now that we've looked at the budget, now that we've looked at the income, now that we've done some tax planning, what can we do to make sure that in 2025, when we get to this exact same step next December, we look at it, we're like, man, my spending plan was on point. My income was higher than what I expected. My taxes look perfect. I don't have to make any adjustments. What can we do today to make sure that we do that? And I'm going to add something more important to that than just saying, I want to be quote unquote good with money. I want to be better with money. That's everyone's January 1 resolution. We all abandon it by January 3rd because it means nothing. What the hell is better? What is good? So what I'd recommend is let's use some SMART goals. And I don't mean just they're just smart in that they're smart. SMART is an acronym, which means that our goal is specific, it's measurable, it's achievable, it's relevant, and it's time bound. So if your goal is to be better with money, let's run that through the smell test. Is that specific? Better is not specific in any way. Is better measurable? Not really, because what is better for one person might be better from another person. Is it achievable? I would say that being better with money is achievable, but again, it doesn't meet the other two things. Is it relevant? Yes, it is relevant. And then is it time bound? Not really, because you can get better right now, tomorrow. What could be one would be for 2025, I want to max out my 401k. I want to pay off my credit card debt, which is $30,000. All of those specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time bound. And when it comes to achievability, make sure it's something that's maybe difficult to achieve. Maybe if you shoot for the moon and come up a little bit short, that's okay. But also don't make it so easy that you know you're going to hit it. Don't make it be like, I want to save 10 cents in 2025. Yes, it's specific, it's measurable, it's relevant, it's time bound. Achievability, though, it's just too easy.
Mhm.
Set yourself up for the moon because if you miss, at least you'd be amongst the stars.
Absolutely. I love that. You took every single word right out of my mouth, but I just found one more. Also, I would also recommend is, like Chris said, have a big goal, have a big vision, right? But also have a roadmap and checkpoints along the way where it's like, okay, this year I'm going to make $1 million. It's like, okay, so basically every point up until I hit the $1 million, I'm failing. It's like, no, no, no. The first goal, let's 10,000. Let's make 10,000. And let's make 100,000. So maybe that's not your goal. Maybe your goal is to lose 20 pounds, right? So this week, my goal, first checkpoint, let's start tracking our food, right? Checkpoint 2, right? Let's get a membership and go, actually go. So make sure, have the big goal, but have a way to get there as well, right? And celebrate every milestone that you get through because it's tough to change yourself. And Chris and I have both transformed both of our lives, right? We were not the same people you see today. It took a lot of work, a lot of introspective thinking, a lot of just putting ourselves in the flame and sharpening the sword to get better. So don't be afraid of the hard work it might take, the crying, the tears, the anger. You're gonna have all of that, but in the end, it's so worth it to really upgrade your life and upgrade yourself into a person you know you can become. And maybe the people around you don't believe that. Well, then show them that you can become even more. And even more importantly, show yourself that you are who you say you are. So, best of luck with the goals. I love the SMART goals. Definitely, definitely, definitely use those and use. And Chris has a point. What do you got for us, Chris?
So I think you brought up a really important point there that I just totally overlooked in making sure that we have the big goal, right? And the goal
Mhm.
might be to save $1 million, might be to max out our 401k, might be maybe to some people the goal is like that's too small of a goal. To other people, that's too big of a goal. Your goal is specific to you, and don't let anyone poop on it. Like it's your goal, stick with it. But we do need to make sure that we break that down into smaller points because if we have a goal that is say save $1 million, max out our 401k, and until we've reached that goal, we feel like we're failing, we're going to give up way before we end up getting there. One time I did one of those steak eating contests, right? It was
I
like
love
big old
that.
steak, right?
Yeah.
And they put the steak in front of me. I can't remember. It was like 60 something ounces. Like it was a big ass steak. And I remember asking the guy, like, how do you eat this? And he just looked at me and he said, son, one bite at a time. So that's the way I had to look at it is that's the way it comes with and comes down to finances too. How do I get to this big old goal of saving $23,000 in my 401k in 2025? One bite at a time and celebrate those little milestones down the road. Hey, if I want to put $23,000 away, guess what? At $1,000, I'm going to go out and get a pizza with my wife. At
Okay.
$5,000, I'm going to go get myself an ice cream. I'm celebrating little things along the way to make sure that I don't get derailed when I feel like I'm just not making progress. I'm not there yet. We
Mhm.
need to feel like we're making progress. And sometimes it's okay. I would say oftentimes it's okay to give yourself those little wins. You need those little wins to stick on the path of financial dependence because a lot of it feels very boring. That's just the boring middle. Go for it,
Absolutely.
Dominic.
And one thing I've kind of realized in my pursuit of greatness, right? My own personal pursuit of greatness is burnout occurs when you're not achieving, when you're not hitting milestones, when you're not hitting goals. And if you don't set any milestones and you only have the big goal, the likelihood of burnout is going to be there, right? So make sure to set those, like we've been talking about, set those milestones because you don't want to get burnt out because we're optimizing for longevity. We're optimizing for the plan to actually be executed, right? Now, if I needed to lose 20 pounds, could I go and stop eating for a month and just be on coffee, vitamins, and water? Maybe. Yeah, I could lose 20 pounds like that. Yeah, probably. But am I going to get to day 30? Honestly, probably not. Am I going to lose the weight? Maybe. But am I going to keep it off? Probably not, right? So make sure you're optimizing for the long term, right? So it's not like we're going to save 90% of our income for the next 3 months. It's like, okay, cool. Then what? So make sure to have a detailed plan after you achieve each step along the way. So best of luck to you. That's kind of my little, you said something there kind of triggered me, but back to Chris, what do you got for us?
Yeah, you triggered me with something you said too. Um, in making sure that when we're setting our goals, that it's something that's within our control, something that isn't really talked about in a SMART goal: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time bound. There's nothing about it being in our control. Because I know what a lot of people do when they set their financial goals, and I'm going to say quote unquote financial goals. Say, I'm going to get a promotion next year. I'm going to get a raise next year, and that's not always within your control. That's really within your boss's control, the company's control, the economy's control of am I going to get a promotion? So sometimes you make those kind of things and you fail to achieve those, you just say, well, the rest of it is boo boo. Why even try working on it? When you set something that's within your control, can I save this much money? Can I do something like that? That is within your control. While we may not be able to always control how much money we make, we can always control how much money we're spending. We need to pull on both sides of these levers. But I'm going to say that the spending issue is something that we can really figure out. And if we dial this in, this is what sets us up on our path to FI. Because once you're comfortable with less, That brings down the amount of money that you need for financial independence. It also increases the amount of money that you get to save every month. So being able to be happy with less is what is really like the main driver to FI.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
for what is less gets to be dependent on every single person. Like for me, I don't care about cars. I don't care about living in like the Beverly Hills. Like I just want to live in a nice place that me and my wife feel safe, and I like to go and eat out occasionally. And I'm happy. I don't need a fancy car. I don't need anything like that. But everyone's a little bit different. Maybe you listen to me, you're like, that's dumb, Chris. Like get a smaller house in a night in a not nice neighborhood and get a fancier car. But everyone gets to choose what's more important to them.
Yes. Yes. I agree. Control the controllables and know thyself. Just those two things alone, you'll get pretty darn far. So, getting back on track with the year-end financial checklist, we talked about, you know, spending plan. We talked about taxes. We talked about how taxes can be avoided, right? Death and taxes. We talked about setting smart goals. Am I missing anything? And what's next?
We talked about also reviewing your income for 2024. That's one
Okay.
thing. And yeah, let's move on to the next one. So the next thing we need to do is we need to start to think about retirement and health considerations. So what this means is, it's beginning of December. If we want to, this would be the time to contribute to our retirement accounts and maximize the contributions before the annual limits reset. Because once those limits reset, you can't go ahead and say like, oh, hey, January 1st, I want this money to go towards 2024's 401k. I want this money to go towards 2024's IRA. So contribution limits for this year, 2024, for the IRAs, it's $7,000. For the
Mhm.
401ks, it's $23,000. And then I want you to know that both of those will be going up by $500 in 2025. So that's going to be 75 and 23,500. And before you blow me up in the comments, yes, for your IRAs, you do have until April 15th of 2025 when you file your taxes to max that out. So you do have more time with that. So if you're trying to like figure out order of operations, do I do the 401k or the IRA? If I want to max them both out, the 401k needs to be done before December 31st. The IRA, you get a few extra months until your taxes are due. So make sure you do that. If you're contributing to a 401k and you can't max it out, please, please, please ensure that you're at least taking advantage of your employer match. That is 100% return on your investment. If they match 3%, at least get 3%. Additionally, look at the vesting schedule, see how long you have to be at the company. If the company says you have to be here for 5 years to get 100% vesting and you know you're only going to be there for 3 months, that's a personal decision. That's when you want to reach out to somebody to actually ask specific questions for your situation, which of course we're not going to sit here and go into everyone's situation because this podcast would never end.
Absolutely, absolutely. For those who don't know, the vesting schedule, right? If you want to just briefly talk about that, you could probably give a much better definition on that than I can. I have a very generalized knowledge of that. Do you want to just briefly touch on that real quick?
For sure. Yeah. So a vesting schedule basically says it's the way that the company incentivizes you to stay with them for the long term. So a vesting schedule might be, hey, we're going to match 4% or five, let's say 5%. 5% of whatever you put into your 401k. If you get a 5% match, that's wonderful. Most companies are 3 to 4. So you get 5, that's even better. But what they're going to say is, so you put in $10. We're going to match $10. But the vesting schedule says, but if you leave in year one, you're not going to get any of that 10% match that we gave you back. So you're only going to keep the $10 you put in there. That's always yours. They can't take that away. But they say if you make it to year one, after year one, if you leave, you're going to keep 20%. So if you leave, you're going to get $2 from that $10. If you go to year two, we'll give you 4%. 3, 6, 4, 8, 5, 10. So if you stayed with them for 5 years, every $10 that you put in and they match $10, you get to keep 100% of that. So that's the vesting schedule. At what point do you get to keep 100% of what they kept? There are some companies that have 5-year vesting schedules. There are some companies that have 0 vesting schedules. The moment you put the money into your 401k and they match it, if you were to say like, cool, I got that match, deuces, I'm out, you still get to keep that. So you really need to make sure you talk to your HR person or read your benefits.
Mhm.
And just a quick way to get around that, because I know when people start asking these questions to their HR person, like, hey, what's my vesting schedule? the HR person's brain's going to be like, this person's about to quit. Let's like fire them before they quit, or like, whatever the hell they're going to think about. So one way that I've gotten around that is, and go into your HR person and be like, hey, I was having my year end review with my financial advisor person, and they asked me to ask you about like this vesting schedule thing. Can you tell me what that is? He said it was like for the 401k or something like that. Therefore, when they get that question, they're going to be like, oh, okay, like they have no idea what they're asking about. Someone told them to get this information. I'll give them this information. And it's not throwing up all the red flags of, this person's about to quit. So just blame it on somebody else. My financial advisor told me, my CPA, my dad asked me to ask, like, put it on somebody else.
Yeah. And that's a brilliant negotiating trick too. Never be the bad guy. Always deflect it. No, someone else is the bad guy. Like I'm not the one asking. I'm just the messenger, right? That's such a brilliant high level negotiating tactic. Yeah, because you definitely don't want to be in there, walk into HR and be like, hey, if I were to quit, like say, I don't know, in like 3 days, would I get all of my matches for the last 3 years? Like, how does that work? I'm just trying to figure this out. Like, that's a terrible way to go into that office and into that meeting. So yeah, I definitely love be like, hey, I was doing my year-end financial review, and my tax guy, my money guy, he was telling me about asking me about what my vesting schedule is, and I just didn't have any clue what that was. I was wondering if you could help me on kind of help me understand like what does that look like here at this company? That's such a better way to do it. And thank you for putting us on for that one, Chris. What else you got? I feel there's a little bit more tax stuff in our future. Am I correct in that? Alrighty,
Of
let's
course there
continue.
is. There's always tax stuff. So when it comes to employer benefits and stuff like that, or just ways that we can save tax efficiently. There's the 401k traditional and Roth. There's the IRA traditional and Roth. The other one that if you are using a high deductible health plan, you have access to, which is the HSA, the health savings account. This is honestly one of my favorite ways to save for retirement that no one really thinks as a retirement account. And the reason for that is it is triple tax advantaged if you use it the right way. So an HSA gives you the ability to save money pre-tax for qualifying medical expenses. And if you use that money for qualified medical expenses, it doesn't get taxed again. Additionally, that money can be invested in the market. So what I do with my HSA when I used to have a high deductible plan is I would put all of my money into that HSA. I would invest it in the S&P 500 or whatever major index you want. Every HSA is going to give you different choices of which you can choose from. Maybe a target date fund, whatever. We're not going to give specifics on that. But
Mhm.
what I would do is put it inside there. And then whenever a medical expense would come up, I would pay from that from my personal pocketbook. It was not coming out of the HSA because my plan is in 20, 30, 40 years. This money has now ballooned up and I get to take it out tax free. And I get to turn in all the receipts from this year, last year, the year before saying, hey, all these medical expenses I should have used my HSA for, but I didn't. So I'm going to take it out of this huge pot of money right now.
And I hear HSA thrown around a lot. Is that similar to an FSA? Is that the same thing or is that different? Or like what's that about?
They are different. We're going to talk about that in just one second.
Okay,
Actually, that's the next
sure.
point. So good that you're coming up upon it. But the one reason that I want to bring up the HSA is if you want to max out your HSA here in 2024, the max contribution is $4,150, and that is matched between the employer and the employee. So with the 401k, you can put up to 23,000 in there, but that doesn't mean anything when it comes to the company contributing. That means that you can put in 23,000. The company can put in an additional 23,000 if they're matching you at 100%. Probably not very likely, but that's possible. With the HSA, however, if the company says like, hey, if you put in 4%, we'll match 1%, your max is still 4,150. So
Okay.
just be aware of that. And we do want to, if we want to max it out, we need to get that done before December 31st. And remember, that's often coming out of your payroll. So you really want to make sure that you're looking at your payroll. And with these last two checks or so, that you're going to be getting in this month, that we're really trying to make sure. So go into your benefit central, whatever you call your benefit thing, take a look at that, see what's going on there. And just, in 2025, that will be increasing by another $150, meaning that we'll be able to have a maximum contribution of 4,300. So maybe we can do some planning and try to get these maxed out throughout the year. When I was working for a company, that's what I used to do. I would say, hey, 2025 is coming, 401k limit, 23,000, HSA limit, 4,300. That means I have 26 paychecks, 24 of them are going to get benefits taken out of them. How much do I need to? I just divided that amount of number or that amount by 24, each paycheck, this is how much is going to go there. So I know it's going to max out just to set you up for next year, make it a little bit easier, get your dumb brain out of there.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. Anything to get myself out of the way of the important decisions and let the experts take over, put me on autopilot, let them take over, and I'll just supervise it. I think that's the best way for me in my life. So, okay, cool. I love that. If that was at all confusing, feel free to like rewind the podcast a little bit and just let it soak in a double time, right? So soak it in again, right? Because I know
Yep.
sometimes that stuff is a lot, right? It might have just
Oh, it
hit you
is.
like water off a duck's back, right? It hits you, you heard it, and you know, tell me what an HSA is, chat. Like what it is. What is it? Right? It's a health savings account, right? You put money in, right? And you contribute to it, and it's just another way where if you get injured or kind of like if you have any and correct me if I'm wrong, because I want to clear up any confusion with myself and with the viewer, right? Say I went to the dentist, right? And my dental insurance covered most of it, right? But I still had a $35 copay, right? I could take that receipt and send it into the HSA and it would reimburse me, or is that how that works? Or am I off on that?
Yeah, that's pretty much right. You're going to have to look at your HSA. The IRS has everything of what qualifies and what doesn't qualify. So for a dentist, that should qualify. But my thought process might be since you have dental insurance, that might not qualify. But
Mm,
in actuality, I believe it does. But HSAs can even do things like going in and getting band-aids from like CVS, getting Neosporin, getting a little splint, whatever it is, you can that can also qualify for an HSA. And just so you know, you're not like sending this receipt to somebody and that person's going to be like reviewing it for like, is this okay or not? No.
yeah.
What you're going to do is you're going to log into your HSA account and you're going to say, I want $35 out. And now it's on you to keep the receipt somewhere. That's why I use a Google Drive and I just keep them all in a Google Drive because in actuality, there's a very small chance that you're going to get audited by the IRS and they're going to look at that. But if it ever does happen, statistically unlikely, but if it ever does happen, you want to be able to go back and say, like, hey, when I took that money out 10 years ago, this is the reason why, and have that proof. Because unlike in a court of law where you are guilty or innocent until proven guilty, with the IRS, you are guilty until proven innocent. So have all those things ready to go to make sure you protect
Absolutely.
yourself.
Absolutely.
Now,
Absolutely. No. Yeah, please continue. You're on a roll. You're on a
um,
roll.
no, do you have anything to talk about the HSA before we move on?
No, I think that's hilarious that it's like you're guilty and proven until proven innocent. Um, yeah, I saw this funny thing online, and I'm sure a lot of people have. It's like, what if like all of America just decides not to pay taxes this year? Like, what are they gonna do? There's like 40,000 of them. There's like 350 million of us. What are they gonna do? But no, I think you're spot on with that, and it's so important to keep good records of everything. And you have yours in a Google Drive. I assume you take a picture of it, and that's just in the Google Drive, or how does that work?
Yep. Yeah, that. I mean, you can also use like for me as a business owner, I have QuickBooks and
Mm,
SimplyWise.
yep,
So yeah, I'll just take a photo of it and then just throw it into that year, and then I'll just put a note like for HSA, and it goes into a little tab. Um,
perfect.
but everyone's a little bit different. Google Drive works really, really well. Shit, if you want to have a box full of receipts, you can do that too. Just it's going to make it a lot more difficult for you. But whatever you want. Now, I do want to move on from the HSA to something you just asked about, the FSA, the Flex Savings Account, or Flexible Savings Account, but Flex Savings Account is faster. This is a little bit different than an HSA. It's actually a lot different than an HSA. The way that a FSA works is it's an employee benefit in which the employee gets to set an allowance in a pre-tax money for eligible medical expenses at the beginning of the year. And the thing that makes a difference between an FSA and an HSA is a flex savings account needs to be used in the year that the services have been given. An HSA stays with you indefinitely. So an FSA, the way that this works, I'm just going to give you a very high level overview because we can go very deep into this, and I don't want to because that's not the point of this podcast. In an FSA, you could say on January 1 of 2025, hey, I want to have a flex savings account. Over this year, I'm going to contribute $3,000 to it. That means on January 1, you have $3,000 available to you in your FSA. So if something happens to you on January 2nd, you can go in there and you have $3,000 ready to go for you, even though you're going to pay this back over time, over the whole year. And there's not going to be anything wrong with that. So that's good. It pulls the money forward. The issue on it though is that when you get to December 31st, say you only use $2,000 of the $3,000 that you put into it. If you don't use that last $1,000 before this year ends, that means that you just lost $1,000. It does not roll over into 2025. So I've never used a flex savings account because of that benefit and because I refuse to go to the doctors because I'm a guy and like, I'm stupid.
So true.
Um,
Same. That's true.
but that's just something that I want you to think about. But people that have used FSAs, I've had clients who I've had who, are mothers and they have a
Mhm.
kid and they're like, I know my little kid's gonna hurt themselves somehow. And I right now I just don't have the money that if something did happen to do that. So I was like, all right, well, what if we did an FSA? That way at least the money comes forward and just make sure you use it. And now the entire year they're conscious of I need to use this amount of money. And they were just cognizant of it and they were able to do it by like October or November. Just
Mhm.
to like get that out of the way. I'm not the biggest fan of FSAs, quite frankly, but for the right situations, it can work out for people. Just please be sure to use the money up so you're not losing money for no reason.
Absolutely.
Yes, you're not paying taxes on it, but that still could have been money that you would have brought into your household.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's one of the things that like you have to consider is when you hear someone say, "Oh, this is just terrible. Never use it. Never use FSA. Never use HSA, right? Never, never, ever." They've just had a bad experience, right? Maybe they were recommended it and it wasn't right for them at that time in that situation, right? But it's not like somebody's sitting back and being like, how can we screw over people? Like, let's create the most evil tool we can and sell it as something helpful. It's like, no, everything is created for a purpose. And if it doesn't fit you and your purpose, then it's the wrong tool, right? I'm not going to go eat my breakfast with a hammer. Right. The hammer is for nailing things in, taking nails out. I know what that's purpose is. I know what the purpose of a hammer is, right? So, same thing with an FSA, right? It might be the right tool for you in your situation. It might not. Nothing against it. There's nothing wrong with that. Just move on to the next tool.
Yeah. And one thing that I will add for the FSA. So say it's coming to the end of the year and we're like, I don't have any doctor's appointments or anything like that. You can go onto the IRS's website and you can see what things qualify for an FSA. Like what things can I use an FSA for? I've had people that have used it for like a Pod Pro cover for like to get maybe a sleep tracker, to buy a Fitbit or something like that. Again, I'm not giving you advice on what you can use your money for. And the IRS has everything very much laid out as to what qualifies and doesn't qualify. So go there and you can look at that just in case you need to make like a year end thing. You're like, I've always wanted like an Apple Watch or like one of those smart watches or a Whoop strap, but I've never had the money for it. And like this is about to expire. Go to the IRS, see if that's okay to do. If it's on the website as like an okay thing to do, go ahead and buy it. Use the FSA. And now you can kind of like say like I bought myself an extra gift because if I didn't, that money would go away.
Yeah.
It would be gone. So
Yeah.
that's just a little tip for you.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. I love that. Hopefully that's all we have to talk about. HSA and FSA. I would love to move on to our next segment. I'm tired of hearing about it. What do we got in segment 3? If we're ready, is there
We're
anything
not
else?
moving to segment 3
Ah,
quite yet because we're still in segment 2, retirement and health considerations. So I want to talk about the final thing when it comes to retirement considerations. And that is if you receive a year end bonus, I
mm,
want you to start to plan accordingly to that and allocate that year end bonus or salary increase to either your retirement savings or towards normal savings or to something like that. We want to make sure that when we're getting that bonus, yes, we're using a good portion of it to increase our lives today. But also, I don't want you to take 100% of it and start using that for today. Take a portion of it, start using that for today. Take the other portion of it and start saving it for tomorrow.
yeah, I like that. I like that. That's a smart way to use it. Some people they go out and they blow their budget, they blow their their bonus, and then at the end of the year they just have nothing to show for it. So
Mhm.
yeah, I like that.
So
Actually putting it towards something that's useful. That's good.
yeah, have a plan. Be like, hey, I just found out I'm going to get a $20,000 bonus, or I just found out I'm going to get a raise, whatever it is. Don't just say, like, we'll see what happens with that money. Because we know what's going to happen if you see what happens. It's going to get absorbed into the budget. You're going to go out and buy extra drinks. You're going to do something with that money. So put some cognition behind it. Think about it. Be intentional with that money. Before that money comes in, say, if I make $20,000, $10,000 of it is going to go into maxing out my HSA and my IRA for 2025. I'm going to put $2,000 into my emergency savings and I'm going to keep $8,000 to go and have fun. I'm totally cool with that. Just put intention behind it. Your intention could even be I'm going to blow $20,000 because I maxed everything out and I'm happy with that. As long as we're cognizant of it, I am happy with it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the funny thing. It's like, as financial advisors or financial people, we have a financial podcast and whatnot. You would think that we would never advise to go out and blow money. But if that's what your spending plan dictates and it makes sense for you, then I don't see why not. Now, out of context, that sounds absurd, right? Obviously, you got to know what you're bringing in. You got to know what you're spending, right? I'm all for having that put in place. I'm all for having, the investment accounts funded. But I definitely think there should be a small amount of money allocated for just having fun, enjoying yourself, right? It's not all about, wow, I can't wait to be the richest guy in the graveyard. That's not life. That's death. And after death, you're not going to remember it anyways. So at least your living body won't. But that's a whole nother conversation of spirituality. And we're not going to get into that today. So I definitely think that while you shouldn't blow your bonus, you should save it and invest it. I think, like Chris says, like live for today, enjoy yourself still. Don't just live for tomorrow. You got to live for both.
Yeah. I think so many people, they have shame when it comes to money because we just don't talk about it, right? So like anything you feel that you did, you should have done something better. And it's so hard when there's so many financial quote unquote gurus who are out there selling you like no matter what you do, you screwed up. Oh, you put your money in the investment, well, you chose the wrong investment. You put it in that account, that was the wrong account. You did this, well, you should have done that. And my whole thing is I don't want people to feel ashamed about their money. Like too many people do that already. I would much rather try to move along the message of empowerment and making sure that you're making conscious decisions because too many of us live our life on autopilot. We live our life as if we're in the matrix, just being stuck through the program. And what I'm trying to do is give people that red pill so they can wake up from the matrix and see like, oh, I've just been living my life on autopilot. I've been living in a daydream. And I can now choose to no longer live that way. And if you make the choice that like, you know what? I'm never going to retire. I'm going to work till I'm 90 and then I'm going to die. I don't think that's a great decision. But if that's the decision you want to make, wonderful. But don't do what most people do, where you just go through life hoping or never really thinking about it and never really making conscious decisions. Make choice, be intentional with those things. That's the one choice we have in life. We don't get to dictate what happens to us, but we get to dictate how we respond to it.
Absolutely. I think it's perfect. If you're going to take anything out of today's podcast, I think it's probably that. Live a life of intention. You have a goal, go out there. Do your best to achieve it. Or an idea of what you want to become. Live a life of intention. There should be purpose behind your decision, not just random actions totaling into a life of strange absurdities.
Yep. Don't be normal. Don't be average. That's what the average person does. I look at a poster every day in my gym, and it's an Arnold Schwarzenegger one that says, the worst thing I can be is just like everyone else. And, I look at that every day. It's right in front of my squat rack.
Damn,
So that's something I really like to do.
I gotta get that poster. That's a good one. I need to hang that in the freaking garage or in the living room or something. I like that. The worst thing to be is average.
Yep. All right. So let's move on to segment 3, charitable contributions and insurance reviews. This one's going to be a pretty quick one. So if we want to do in charitable contributions in this year, we need to make a plan to start doing those charitable donations now, because December 31st, that stuff resets and you can't make a charitable deduction for your taxes or anything like that. You can't do that in January and say, I actually want that to count for 2024. So you need to start to do those things right now. Ensure that we have the proper documentation for tax purposes. You can't just say like, I went to Goodwill that one time, like I get to write off $1 million. If you don't have those little pamphlets that literally mean nothing, but if you don't have those little pamphlets that have everything, that doesn't mean that you get to just write that off. Additionally, I always like to recommend that if you are someone who is very charitably minded, setting up a donor advised fund is a really good way to go about doing that, because you can not only give money, but you can also give away appreciated stock, meaning that you don't ever pay taxes on it, the charity doesn't pay taxes on it, and it's a tax write-off. Very, very wonderful. With it being already December, there's more than likely not enough time to set that up, but a donor advised fund could be something that you could look into in 2025 if you are charitably minded and you're someone who has a higher net worth and the ability to give more than like $100 or $50, to the kids or something like that. If you're someone who's giving thousands, that might be the way to look at it. Tens of thousands.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And there's more than one way to be charitable. I know we're talking about, finance, end of year checklist, but it is the holiday season. So there's more, like I said, there's more than one ways to donate, right? You can donate your time, you can donate your resources, your money or whatever. And it's so enriching to go and help people. So I highly encourage to go help the community, maybe go donate food, maybe go work at a food shelter or something like that. There's so many options. I highly encourage everybody just go out and actually be of service. I feel like a lot of what we feel like we do, a lot of what we actually do, mean almost nothing in the greater scheme of the year, right? I go to work. I make my widgets. I clock out. Who buys these widgets? I don't know. I'm just, a cog in the system, right? But if you go out and maybe you deliver turkeys on Thanksgiving, or you go out and you give presents to underprivileged kids, right? That stuff means stuff. That's the type of stuff that lives with you. Right? I have plenty of memories of delivering turkeys on Thanksgiving to these families that are just so grateful. That's the stuff that really guides your North Star, right? And guides your moral compass. So just because we're finance podcasts, doesn't mean we don't have a heart. So make sure to go out there and be a good person and make good choices and help the people around you.
Yeah, and if you don't have the ability to do something monetary, you can always donate your time. You can go and donate time at a food shelter, something like that, giving out food. Something me and my wife do every year is we'll typically buy like 5 to 10 of those like little turkey dinners that you can buy when you're at Sprouts or at
Mhm.
at Kroger's or whatever your local food store is to give to someone in need. We also always do Toys for Tots drive.
Of course.
So both her and I will go to Target or wherever. We go and we channel our inner child. We go through the Target toys area. We'll buy a toy for a boy and buy a toy for a girl, and then we'll go and drop that off at one of the Toys for Tots drive because that's when I was growing up. That's how me and my sister got presents. Um, our parents were also able to buy things for us, but that's one of the ways was through that, which was always
Mm.
really really wonderful. Um, and I always end up buying something for myself too because every time I go into the toys section, you see something that you're like, I need this, and you have to justify it by saying, if I'm buying something for a kid, I get to buy something for myself too. Not saying it's right, not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying it happens every freaking year. And
Exactly.
I always end up coming home with a Lego toy.
Exactly. It's like I was a kid once. What do you mean? I'm still a kid. We gotta run it up. You gotta feed that inner child during the holiday season and honestly throughout the entire year. So it's good. It's good to bring happiness. It's good to be happy. So I highly encourage to do exactly what Chris said. Get a toy for a boy. Get a toy for a girl. Get some for yourself. Good plan. Good
Something
plan.
small for
I'm
yourself, but
small. Yeah.
something fun. The next thing I want to talk about when it comes to charitable contributions and insurance review is the insurance review part. So this is where I want you to review and update your insurance. And what that really means is just assess your life insurance if you have a life insurance. Is it the correct coverage? Assess your health insurance because right now is time for open enrollment at your company, most likely. Um, is check your auto insurance, make sure that's right, and make sure that your home insurance is correct too. You should be checking your auto and your home insurance at least once a year, because just so you know, they reprice up and down every 6 to 12 months, and they do not need to notify you if they go up or down. So it's up to you to call them and say, hey, well, they'll notify you if they go up, but they don't have to notify you if they go down. So it's up to you to call and say, hey, is there any way that we can save money here? Additionally, this is very, very important, look at the beneficiaries of your life insurance, of your health insurance, of your home and auto. Make sure that you have the correct beneficiary. The beneficiary is the person that gets paid out in the event of an incident. So for life insurance, your beneficiary would be, if you were to die, this is the person getting it. What I don't want is for you to have your ex-girlfriend, your sister, your brother, your best friend when you have a spouse that like would actually need that money. So please make sure you update that. You should know all the time, but like this one time of the year, look at that
Yeah.
and just make sure that it's right because it can cause some huge issues.
Absolutely. Yeah. Please take care of those that matter to you. We had a Five Friday feedback where I think it was a soldier who had passed away, and his ex girlfriend had got the beneficiary, the money and whatnot, and she felt that it was wrong, and she wanted to give it to the parents. She wanted to know if there was any tax, if I was going to get hit with a massive tax bill because of this or anything like that. So trying to avoid that, like Chris said, keep up to date on all of those things. It is very important.
It is. So now we can move on to section number 4, and then we're gonna kind of come to a close here in a little bit. But this is financial safety nets and investments. So with financial safety wet nets, this is the time we need to assess and adjust our emergency fund. Do we have too much in our emergency fund? And I know what you're saying. How can you have too much in your emergency fund? Well, if your emergency fund, if you spend, I don't know, let's say $40,000 a year and your emergency fund is $200,000, I can make the argument that your emergency fund is a little too big. But also, if you're someone who spends $100,000 a year and your emergency fund is 15 bucks, I could very much make the argument that your emergency fund is too small. So there is no exact measurement. I know every single guru says 6 months, 3 months, a year, and everyone has their own things. Whatever makes you sleep well at night. I have a year's worth. I'm neurotic though. Dominic, I know you have like 6 months or something like that. Everyone's a little bit different. And we are financial professionals, or so everyone's different there. I'm not going to tell you exactly what it is, whatever allows you to sleep well at night, but please just have enough that could cover you for a few months if something was to go wrong. I would say at minimum 3 months. But it also is going to depend on, do you have people dependent on you? If you were to lose a job, are you pretty employable? There are so many factors in there that it's hard for me to make a sweeping thing. But if I had to gun to my head, I would say 3 months should be your minimum for 99% of people.
Definitely. Definitely. I love that. That's spot on. Yeah, 3 months minimum for sure. And
Yep.
there's so many things to factor in right there as well. How much does kids cost? How much does the wife cost? How much do you cost, right? And you cut back, right? If you were to lose your job, is there immediate fat you can trim off the bones? Like, wow, well, we go out to eat 4 times a week, right? Well, that would stop immediately. So you get another job. Truthfully, I don't think you should be going out 4 times to eat anyway, but that's me. That's for me in my plan. Don't let me judge you. That would be wrong, right? So if that's in your financial plan, you get the means to do it. Go for it. But I agree. 3 months minimum. 6 months better. 6 months better. Me personally, 6 months better. But each their own.
To each their own, right? The next thing I want us to do when it comes to our investments, and this is going to be a really quick point. I'm not going to go too into depth into it, but I want you to do a quick portfolio review. Ideally, we have some sort of a risk tolerance. We know what we're investing in some way, shape, or form. And if you don't, you can go back and listen to this podcast. If you really want help, you can always reach out to me, Chris at monzonwealth.com. You can visit monzonwealth.com. That's MONZON, wealth, common spelling, .com, where we can set up a time to chat and I can at least point you in the right direction. But this is the time where we want to potentially rebalance our investment portfolio because sometimes over the year, things get out of whack. Maybe we said we wanted to be, I don't know, 80% stocks, 20% bonds, but over the year, the stocks have ballooned substantially or the bonds have shrunk or whatever it is. And now we're out into like a 40-60 or something has gone awry. This may be a time to look at that and see if things have changed. Maybe you're somebody who's 100% stocks. Maybe you're someone who's like, I'm all S&P 500. Well, good news. You're not going to have to do much work because that's not going to change. But maybe you've looked at that and said like, hey, with the market moving around so much, I'm not comfortable with this anymore. I'm looking at my account every day, freaking the hell out. I'm not sleeping well. That might be a reason to go ahead and change the allocation or talk to a professional to say, is there something I can do to fix this? Because if I'm not sleeping well at night, it doesn't matter what your returns are. Like you're going to burn out and you're going to make a bad decision at some point. Do you have anything before I move on to the next point on that, Dom?
No, I think that's spot on. Picking the right investment vehicle that fits you and suits you is so important, right? You don't want to be in something that's going to keep you up at night, Chris said. And you might not want something that feels boring, right? Maybe being in 100% bonds is kind of boring to you, right? It is very boring, but you want some skin in the game. Like I know for some people in my family, they're like, man, I want some skin in the game. I want something to actually go up and go down and I want to see movement. Right? I want to wake up and check it. Right? And other people are like, I do not want any part of it. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to see it. I know it's in the right account. Just let it do its thing. Whatever makes you sleep a little bit better at night. My take.
And one thing I do want to add when it comes to the rebalancing of the portfolio is this may be at a time where we can consider tax loss harvesting. So what that really means is that you have the ability to sell securities or your stocks or your bonds or whatever it is in a timely manner in order to, or at a loss to offset the amount of capital gains tax owed for selling profitable assets. So an individual taxpayer can write off up to $3,000 in net losses annually by selling stocks at a loss. We're not going to go too depth into that. If you have more questions, call up your brokerage account, call up your CPA, ask about that. But you can write up to $3,000 in net losses annually. But that also means that we're selling stocks that have lost value. One time I was talking to an advisor, and he was telling me, he's like, yeah, I have this really great algorithm that allows me to constantly tax loss harvest. So my portfolios perform really, really well. And there are people who are falling for this guy's bullshit. And I was like, so basically what you're telling me is that your portfolios lose so much money constantly that the way that you sell that to people is that at least the taxes would be okay because of how much money I'm losing.
That's crazy. That's so crazy. That's so crazy. That's so crazy. That's crazy. Oh my
But when
gosh.
people don't understand and they hear fancy words like that, they're like, I want that. Like, I want tax loss harvesting. That sounds good. But if they don't understand what that means, that's where people can really get taken advantage of. So that's the reason that we do the podcast, is to share this stuff, because I've seen terrible things that some quote unquote financial advisors do to people. A majority of them are just product salesmen.
Yeah. Yeah.
It'd be like walking on to the CarMax lot and like saying like, hey, I need a car that can do this and do this and do this. And you're really believing that the person that you're talking to has the best of you in intention. No, they're a commission person. They're trying to sell a product. They're not a real, I'll put that in quotes. They're not a quote unquote real financial advisor, real consultant,
Yeah.
real coach.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah. You got to stay vigilant. You got to stay wise.
And if it doesn't pass the gut check when it comes to finances and stuff like that, just get a second opinion. And if you don't find the answer you like, keep looking, because I guarantee it's out there somewhere. Let's move on to segment number 5, debt management, education, and legacy planning. Another quick one. So, debt review. I want you to make sure we assess our outstanding debts and create a debt repayment plan if we are in debt. And we can always consider debt refinancing if need be. But remember, that does come with some things. We've done so many episodes on that. We're not going to get too deep into that. But if we have debt, we need to make a plan in December to make sure that this does not continue again.
I agree 100%. Yeah. To repeat the same mistakes over and over and over. You guys know what it feels like. I know you know what it feels like. I know what it feels like. It sucks. So let's break that habit. Let's turn the page. Let's get into a new chapter, guys.
Next thing, if we do have excess money from maybe a bonus or from a year-end increase, and we want to make sure we're saving money for our kids in their future and their education, this might be a good time to look at your contributions if you're making anything to a 529 plan, or for saving money for any other type of educational savings account. Are we getting that done now? Do we have a plan for the rest of next year to maybe try to put as much as we can away into that account? And the final thing I want us to do before we get to our bonus is I want you to do just a quick estate plan. If you don't have a will created or a trust created from an attorney, you already have a will created, and it's whatever your state's guidelines are. So I think it's better to actually create a will or a trust that you have some intention behind, that you made a choice behind. I'm not going to go directly into what the difference between a will and a trust is. We could go down that rabbit hole and be here for an hour and a half. We've actually done that podcast a few times now. So go back and find those if you want to. But this is the time, because if you don't have a will, if you don't have a trust, you already have a plan in place, and it's whatever the state decides. And every state's a little bit different. And you might look at what the state says and be like, I don't agree with this. Or maybe you have a complex situation. Maybe you have multiple marriages. Maybe you have kids with disabilities. Maybe you have kids that you've written off entirely or haven't heard from in years that you don't want to get anything. These are all things that would really make sense to speak with a qualified estate attorney to figure out. So if you have that plan in place, review it. Make sure anything has changed. Verify the beneficiaries are correct. Verify the retirement accounts are correct. Verify the insurance policies are correct. If you don't have any of these things, please, please, please have a password manager. Tell your partner that, hey, if I was to die, this is where all the money is, and this is the way you get into these accounts.
Honestly, that is a great idea. Right? And careful who you give it to, right? Maybe don't give it to a girlfriend if you're on a rocky relationship. Might clean you out. But give it to someone who might care about you, right? Maybe a mother or father or someone like that. Yeah. Careful
Yeah,
though.
yeah,
You're giving them the
yeah,
keys to your whole life. So,
yeah.
careful.
Be super careful. Like, and that's just like the poor man's will, right? Like, you should honestly, ideally, like if you have kids, if you have dependents, if you have stuff like that, I would go get a trust done, like from a qualified estate attorney. But if you're just someone who doesn't want to do that, there are ways around it, but there are no solutions here, only trade offs. The solution is get the trust done and get it done right. But if you don't want to do that, then there's only trade offs. And you're going to have to make your decision there. So before we close out, I want to give you a bonus checkpoint that I want everyone to do. And this is to do a credit check. What that means is I want you to obtain and review your credit report. And I'm not just saying go to TransUnion, Equifax, whatever it is, and just see like, click on it and be like, all right, cool, my score is 740. Good, dip out. No, what I really want you to do is I want you to pull a real credit report from one of the three major bureaus. Just so you're aware, you actually have the ability, you are entitled from the government to have one free credit report from each of the three credit bureaus. That's Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion once every 12 months. So this is your once every 12 months. What I want you to do is go to annualcreditreport.com. Please make sure it's the right one. Type it into the URL, not into Google. Annualcreditreport.com. That's the official website from the federal government that you can go in there and you can request. You don't have to check, you don't have to pull it from all three if you don't want to. Pull it from one and don't just look at the number at the top. Yes, if the number at the top is bad, that's not great. If it's good, that's great. But what I really want you to do is dig into what's below it. Why is that score that score? That 3-digit number is very important. Don't just look at that though and say, I'm done. Go down into it. Say, what's going on down here? Are there any mistakes? Does everything look right? Is there saying that you had a hard credit pull when you haven't applied for credit? Is it saying that you have something on there or you missed a payment when you never did? You need to look through these things because you can actually call the credit bureaus and say, like, hey, there's a mistake on here and I need you guys to fix it. And they will work with you to fix it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I pulled my credit and I found some interesting things. So I highly recommend you guys pull yours and see what's in there. So with that being said, is there any final thoughts?
Just our action step for the week because we're all about action here. And that is, I know we're in December now and this is the time we just finished out Thanksgiving. We maybe still have family at the house. I know I do in my house. So what I really want you to do first and foremost is focus on the holidays, focus on your family, focus on your friends. That's always going to come first and foremost, those relationships that love and the people who are most important to you. And with that being said, as time permits, I want you to work on one or two of these steps each day before the end of the year. I'm not telling you you need to do all of these steps today because we all know it's not going to happen, but work on one of them every day. Set aside 5, 10, 20 minutes. Just say, hey, every day at 6 p.m., I'm going to work on one of these little segments. If you need to go back, listen to this podcast again, do that over and over and over again until we complete as much of this as we possibly can. If there are things that don't contribute to you, like, oh, I'm not doing an HSA, I'm not doing the FSA, I don't have kids, so I'm not contributing to a 529 plan, skip that part of the podcast. There you go. You get to check that off the box. Already completed. But please make sure that you're setting yourself up for 2025. And just know that Dominic and I don't get anything. We're not going to get paid commission if you set yourself up for 2025. Always look at someone's intentions behind what they're doing. We are legitimately trying to help you. If you end this year with this financial checklist and you are better off next year, that's a win for us. No one's going to come upon from heaven and give us money or anything like that. We're legitimately just trying to help you as best as we possibly can.
Absolutely.
We're trying to be the change that we needed when we were at this stage in life.
Truthfully. Well, with that being said, guys, if you did enjoy the podcast, feel free to subscribe if you're not already following the channel. Give it a like, give it a follow, all that fun stuff. Share it with a friend because going on this financial journey is so much better when you have someone else to go with. That being said, we'll see you guys on Friday. Happy holidays. Enjoy yourselves. And we're the Five Guys. Peace, guys.
This video podcast is sponsored by Monzon Wealth. The content in this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial advice. We do not endorse specific products or services. Past performance does not guarantee future results. The opinions expressed are those of the host and guests, not the podcast sponsor.
It is crucial to consult with a qualified financial advisor or professional who can provide advice tailored to your specific needs before making any financial decisions, investments, or taking any other actions. If you are seeking specified help, you can reach out to Chris at monzonwealth.com.